What's up? Thanks for joining the Fish Blue Water channel. Today is service day for my 39 CV Team Encore 400 Mercury Verados. I got my guys Cody and Davin from Preferred Marine. They handle all of the service work on my outboards. They do a lot of the work inside the hull as well when we need some general maintenance, whether it's electrical work or whatever. Obviously they're a certified Mercury warranty dealer, and they're here today to do a 100-hour service. So Cody, Davin, you guys ready to do your thing?
Let's do it. Let's get after it.
We're about to pull some props and get under the hood.
All right, so here is a prime example of why we do regular routine services. Can cause premature failure having fishing line on the prop shaft. What can happen is it can wear a groove in the seals, leading to water introduction into the lower unit. This was not bad, it was just more so on the prop shaft than on the actual seal itself. But again, this kit right here can cause a lot of problems down the road, and of course the problems never happen at the dock. It's when you're with the family in the Bahamas, in the Keys, on the road traveling. So things to look for. So some things if you'd like to inspect when you're pulling your props off, it'd be first to kind of check the blades itself, the overall prop. Right here doesn't seem like there's any dings, any imperfections that could lead to poor performance. But it's something to always take a look at and keep on your radar when you're doing these services, because that could lead to a bigger problem if there was an existing problem. So when you do this, you want to inspect. Right, first check for any fishing line. I don't see any visible here. Take your rag, you want to clean all the old grease off. Start fresh. Make sure everything looks good there. That way you have a clean surface to work with. So if you didn't have that block of wood and you're sitting there trying to do this, that prop's going to keep spinning, and even trying to hold it, you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to achieve what you're looking for. So you put that here, there, hands clear of the blades. You are now able to gain the leverage you'd like and simply back it off. What we're gonna do is grab our trusty 10 mil on a 1/4 inch drive. Here, clean the prop shaft. Nice clean work area. Now we're going to drain the gear lube and inspect, see if we have any discoloration, or is it just going to be a regular service. So you always want to start with the vent screw. When you pull the top screw out, it stops from, if this gear case is pressurized and you take the bottom screw out first, gear lube can and will go all over you sometimes. So take that out. Very important that you make sure the seals are off. Sometimes the seals like to get stuck in this little groove. Simply take a little pick if that happens, pop it out. But you want to keep track of these so that way we can put fresh new ones on and not stand a chance of maybe doubling them up or leaving one on. Take the bottom one off. Make sure we get the seal. And now our gear lube's draining. Now you want to sit here and watch this, right, to see if there's any discoloration, like I said, or any reasons for doubt. Chances are you'll be fine, but these are things to just keep in the back of your mind while you're working. You're gonna trim the engine down a little bit.
Would you like me to do that for you?
Yes, please, thank you. And get to it. Gravity is your best friend when it comes time to this. If you are over the water, on a boat lift, and you're not on a trailer on hard land, you always want to keep your raft underneath you, so that way you have a stable platform to work under. And then that way you can be in control of the buckets, of the liquid. There's a lot of things that come into play that you might not think of, some of those being the wind being a big factor. So you want to do whatever you can to make sure you're prepared and you don't have to worry about any unseen circumstances. So we're going to get some fresh seals out. Use all genuine Mercury products. So here's a pack of our Gear Lube seals, Quicksilver brand by Mercury. You want to make sure you use all genuine Mercury parts for your services. If you are a guy that likes to do things yourself, you do it yourself, that's fine, by all means. If your engine's covered under warranty, go buy your parts from a Mercury dealer. Keep your receipts and keep it in a nice folder or a binder. So that way, in case anything ever happens, you're covered with genuine Mercury parts and you can be saved. That right there is exactly why you take the vent screw out first. Unless you like being covered in Gear Lube. Everything looks very standard and normal. No discolorations, no signs of possible problems coming down the road, so it's a good thing. Again, this is why you do the 100-hour, whether it's, depends on your usage, but whether it's once a year or every couple months, it's very important to do this so you can avoid potential problems in the future. Okay, so right now we're looking at the engine that had a little bit of line on the prop shaft. Everything looks fine, does not look like there's any damage, any worn seals, or any water in the gear case. So, Jamie, you'll be good to go. So while you're down here on the raft, or if you're on the hard, your boat's on the trailer, you want to take this time to look at everything down here while you're here, whether it's your anodes, on the bottom side of your cav plate, your side anodes, and then the pedestals mounted ones. Mercury's rule of thumb is 2/3 missing, then you replace. And again, depends if your boat lives in the water, right? If it lives in the water, you're probably gonna have to change them out every 100 hours. But it's a case by case, it varies case by case. So not all the times you have to, but the more aware you are of what you have going on, you can plan accordingly. Right now, parts are scarce, and they have been. So if you can let your dealer or your guy, or even if it's you who's doing it, be able to provide them with as much information that you have. Maybe do a quick look. Yeah, they look like they're ready to be changed. Let's go ahead and at least get them on order and put them in reserve in case we do need to. All those things can help the boat's life, right? It's sacrificial anodes for a reason. They're meant to be replaced. It's not irregular to be replacing them. Boats that live on lifts, usually you're good maybe at the 300-hour mark. Again, just something to keep your eye on while you're down here inspecting. Now that our Gear Lube on the starboard engine is now drained, we're gonna it's time to fill it. So something to consider and something to do is, you trim your engine all the way down to drain it. You wanna trim it up just past level on a slight angle, so that way you can maximize how much Gear Lube you're getting in. If you do it while the engine's trimmed all the way down, you might not be filling the gear case to its proper level. So we got our handy dandy Gear Lube pump. If you're at home doing it yourself, Mercury sells a little hand pump that screws right onto the quartz. Very easy to do. Or you can go grab another hand pumper that you may have at the house. Biggest thing to do is to make sure you have the right threads that go on. Failure to do that, it will you're not going to be able to fill your gear case properly, and you'll not get the most out of it. So we're gonna go ahead and prime our pump. Next, we're gonna crack it open just a touch. So sometimes people will open your valve all the way up. Now, yeah, you will be pumping a lot of gear lube in, but you could also be introducing air into the system. So cracking it allows just a normal natural flow to make sure that you don't have a false reading to seeing that it's full when really you might be, 3/4 of the way full or half. So having the engine trimmed up and cracking it just a little bit, and the hand pump that you could do on the quartz, that's going to be a more easier way to do it for lack of air introduction. So as you can see now, you got the gear lube, right? And forgot to mention this earlier, you want to fill from the bottom and it's going to come out your vent screw, okay? Very important. It seems pretty rudimentary, but you want to make sure you go to the bottom, comes out the top, you fill from the top, it's going to be coming right out the bottom. Not the right proper way to do it. So you want to just crack that open, wait for the fresh gear lube to come out. Okay, and you can turn your prop shaft a little bit. It'll finish folding up. Okay, now we can cap it. Again, we have new seals on the existing screws. Put that in by hand. Always important to use a 1/4 inch tool, not a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch or even an impact. When you're doing this, you want to go hand, start it by hand, come in with a 1/4 inch, and just snug it up to where it's tight. Now, I've seen boats when I go to do a service that someone maybe use an impact or maybe a 3/8 drive. That provides too much pressure on it and can blow out the gear lube seals. It's a small seal, it's doing its job, but if you do anything to put too much pressure on it, just like anything fragile, it will blow out. That can also cause premature failure. So you want to start everything by hand, come in with a 1/4 inch drive, not 3/8, not 1/2 inch. Start it by hand so you know you're not cross-threading it. Get in there, tighten it down, and like I said, just make sure it's nice and tight, not over tight. So now that we capped our vent, we're going to switch over to the drain. Take our piece out. Cap that by hand. Come in with a 1/4 inch on a number 10. Found that an extension is very helpful when you're down here doing this, because if you had a normal extension or you don't, you're battling the prop shaft most of the time. Again, if some of these screws get stuck or the pressure's built up, you go to break it loose, you can smack your hand, cut your hand open. Just little things like that, something to do that I've found over the years that has made my life easier, and hopefully this helps you when you're doing it yourself.
Hey guys, we're gonna go over taking off the lids on these 2-piece Verado cowls. In the back here, there is a groove cut out where you can stick your hand in and you'll feel almost a rubbery handle. You just pull up on that, pull forward and lift up. If you're going into the boat, set it down somewhere clean, out of the way. Now on the lower ones, you have this black handle here, and that's just gonna come up like that. If you're reaching over it, be careful not to fall into it, and it just kind of has to be worked off the back and over. Again, somewhere clean, out of the way. Now when you're taking these off, there's 3 things you want to look for, because there are 3 cables that hold these cowls on each engine. The top cowl has 1. If it's broken, you won't be able to get it off. There are 6 screws variously placed. I can show you now. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 2 in the front. You'll see the latch mechanism down here in the bottom. You can then open it, pull the cowl off, replace the cable. And if you want to come over here, I can show you the lower cowls. They're tucked way down in there, and they operate on a cable and a spring. If the cable snaps, you might have a really hard time getting the cowl to come off, or if the spring snaps, it might not retract when you go to put it back on. Okay, so our next step is going to be to remove the oil filter and replace the oil filter. It's located, if you're looking at the engine, on the left-hand side, right behind the intake tube here. Get you a strap wrench. There's a harness behind it. It's going to get a little feisty with you, but you can manage it if you just be patient. We have our old oil filter and our new up-to-date in-stock oil filters. Pretty nice. They come with a pre-lubricated gasket. That's what this plastic is there to prevent the loss of. If you can see, there's a sheen on it, so you don't have to dip your fingers in oil to re-lubricate this gasket. We're going to make sure our threads line up. And we're going to spin her on. And as soon as that gasket touches the base, we're going to go for a full 3/4 turn and lock it in. So next up, we're going to take care of the belt replacement. First off, we're going to take the intake loose. Flathead screwdriver. There are 2 pins in the back, so we want to lift from these back corners to pop them off. And then we're just going to work it out of that intake tube. Lay that out of your way, somewhere it doesn't fall in the water. And a 3/8 drive, no socket or anything like that. You're gonna come into this tensioner here. We're gonna just open that and peel it off. With our new belt, Mercury Marine pointed up, we're going to work it back in under the starter, around the alternator, under the tensioner, and finally over the supercharger pulley. And next we will replace the intake air duct, lining up the pins and the intake tube all at once. Retighten this hose clamp, not too tight to crush the tube, just enough to hold it in place. Next up, we're going to go over the inline filter change. This is located on the right lower hand side of the engine if you're looking at it. You're going to get yourself a rag to catch any excess fuel. And these are located on 2 quick connect fittings. If you look at this new one, you can see the 2 barbs, and there's an arrow located on it. That arrow dictates the flow of fuel, so you want to point it back towards the fuel rail. Discard your old one and replace it with your new one. Two quick snaps, nice and easy. Now we're going to go over changing the remote mounted water separator. You may have a few different options. This is a Mercury water separator, very common on the L6 350-400. You may also have one that's slightly longer for the very large high capacity, or even a Raycor. They're all acceptable means of capturing water and separating it from the fuel. This particular one has a bung for a sensor. I've already loosened it, and we need to replace this plug with a sensor. Set this one aside. We want to shut any fuel valves off. That way, if the tanks are hot and they need to vent, they're not spraying fuel everywhere with that ease of air. And then we'll just take our strap wrench here. And this can be tricky because the threads are upside down. Figuring out which way it's supposed to rotate. I've loosened this one. See that fuel spray? We want to catch that with a rag, a bucket, or a suitable oil absorbent pad. Just ease that off. Being careful not to spill. Dispose of the fuel. Now we're going to take a set of smooth pliers or a 5/8 wrench, and we're going to remove this filter from the old one. You do have the option of replacing the sensor altogether, which I would recommend if available. Each of these Mercury filters, Mercury branded filters, come with a replacement O-ring. So if you're using one of these sensors again, be sure to replace that O-ring. And we want to put just a tiny bit of grease on the threads to ease it back into the filter, if I have any left. This helps with lubricating the O-ring as well, creating a more reliable seal. It is a plastic thread, so be very careful not to cross thread this. And just like that, you're back in. Snug it up, do not over tighten it, it will crack. Perfect. And just like our oil filters, these come pre-lubricated, so there's no need to add any additional to the gasket. Plug your sensor back in. Be sure to open your fuel valve back up. And you're all good there.
So now we're done with the gear lube, done with the gear case side of things. We're gonna move to draining the engine oil on the L6 400 350. Their oil drains are here. It's gonna be underneath on the port side engine, 12 mil wrench. Got a fresh seal. Again, it's always important that you do not reuse seals. It seems like it's a very minuscule part of it, but do new, keep it fresh, keep everything tight and right. So you break this free, come down to where it's about to. And Mercury sells this really handy drain specifically designed for the 350-400 L6 Verado, or any L6 Verado for that matter. Helps keep oil where it needs to be going, which is down and into the bucket. Keeps them nice and tidy during your workstation. So, you know, again, oil can go everywhere, but pull that, get ready. Good execution. Now while that's draining, you're going to take the old seal off. So while you're draining your engine oil, you want to make sure that there's no impurities in the oil itself. You want to make sure it's just a normal standard color, doesn't have any smell, doesn't have any fuel smell, and doesn't have any, you know, metallic flakes in there. Again, when you keep up on your maintenance, you should never have an issue, but these are always things to keep in mind while you're doing it. So put the new seal on, sit here. So these engines hold just under 2 gallons, about 7 quarts of engine oil. 5-gallon bucket will suffice. Nice, like I said, nice yellow Mercury filter, makes everything easy. And then once we're done with this, we can go back upstairs, add fresh new oil. We're gonna put the props on, and then we're gonna turn it down, trim the engines down, put the lift down, and start them up.
So while Cody's still draining the other ones, the oil that is, I'm gonna go ahead and fill one that he's already done. We're gonna fill it to the 7.4 quarts, and then we're gonna just double check that we landed within the crosshatch of the dipstick. Be sure to pull the foil completely off the gallon if you're using a gallon. We don't want that to end up in the engine. So now we've got 1 full gallon in, 4 quarts. We have 3.5 left to go. Perfect, have a half a quart left. Now before we just go pulling the dipstick to check how much is left in there, or filled in there, we have to let it settle for a while, trimmed all the way down. Due to the design of the oil sump, we'll let that rest for a few minutes and come back to it. One thing I do want to go over when we're changing these belts, and hopefully it doesn't get overlooked, is this tensioner pulley. This is spring loaded. This smooth pulley has a bearing inside, and the way we check that is just spin it. If you hear any growling or if it spins seemingly forever, we want to change that pulley before something bad happens. Say the bearing goes out, tears up the belt, the alternator doesn't work, the supercharger won't make boost, and you'll be not stranded, but pretty close to it. So we just want to check that, a couple quick spins, make sure it's not growling at you, and then replace your belt if all is well there.
All right, guys, so we've wrapped up our portion of the service down here by draining the gear lube, changing out the gear lube seals, draining engine oil, and also replacing the engine oil seal. Now we're putting the props on. Okay, like we did earlier, take all the old grease off, start fresh. You want to apply new grease to the prop shaft. Apply liberally. Okay. Next, take your prop. And always be cautious if you're on a multi-engine boat that you have the correct prop. They do make a left-hand counter-rotating engine, and they also have right-hand counter-rotating engines. Some boats run different pitches in the middle. Some are the same across the board, but those are some things to keep in the back of your mind as you're going through the process, because it's easy to start putting things back on, and the next thing you know, you could have prop swapped and you're going backwards when you should be going forwards. So we got a right-hand prop, Bravo 1. Okay, we're good, and now we're going to put our hardware back on. Make sure your washer's in the correct orientation. Start your prop nut by hand, very important. You do not want to cross thread, and it will eat up the threads in the actual prop nut. Okay, so once you get here, breaker bar, 1/2 inch, 1 1/16 socket. Again, grab our trusty block of wood. Now for these Bravo 1 props, you want to be cautious that you're not putting too much pressure on the actual the blade of the surface like that. You want to take it off like this to minimize, because sometimes if you over torque them the improper way, you can bend an ear. Ear being the end of the prop blade. So we go here, get it nice and tight. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we know all of our props are on there tight, they're properly greased, all of our fluids are properly filled. We're cleaning it up down here, so we're gonna get off the raft, drop the boat in the water, and run the engines. All right, guys, so now that we're done with the actual service part, this is gonna be our last and final step before we run them, and that's to protect your engines, right? We use CRC 656. It leaves a very thin film that protects against salt, corrosion, anything in between. All right, so when you come on here, you want to avoid certain areas, and you want to make sure you cover certain areas as well. You want to avoid the flywheel area, okay? So you don't want to slip the belt. You don't want to cause anything of that nature, right? Because you have your pulley system, you have your supercharger, your starter, etc. up here. So you want to just do a nice quick mist covering everything. And then when you get down to the cradle side, you can give it a couple extra seconds down there as gravity falls, right? Water's going to collect down there if water gets in. So you want to make sure you get every inch that you can. Coming around to the back, you can spray up here. As we know, a lot of us use these boats in saltwater applications. Salt air does build up. So if you are, like I said, if you use your boat weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, etc., it's good to take your cowls off, right? The little fresh water, and you can spray in the same exact areas as we did with the CRC. If you take your top cowl off, take your back cowl off, take your hose, lightly mist everything, right? Kind of if you see salt build up, then you can let it air dry. It'll dry in a couple of minutes. Let those air dry, then spray the CRC, and that'll seal everything in, leaving you with a freshly cleaned engine ready for the next adventure.
See how that works? Like, when you're not really good at this stuff, you just call the right people.
That's it.
And hey, if you are good at this stuff and this video helps you out, that's what it's all about. So, we're done?
We're done, man.
Service complete?
Go fish, go catch some stuff now.
So, for these guys watching the video, I'm 400 hours in on this set of engines. Last service was at 300. So next service at 500 or anything in between?
Yep, 500, you're good for another 100 hours.
Okay.
Whether it's next year or the next couple months, 100 hours, you're good to go. We checked everything, replaced anything that may need to be replaced, and you're good to go, man.
Awesome.
Ready for some summer tournaments.
So most important thing, obviously, if you guys are mechanically inclined and you're the DIY guy, use a video like this to make sure you're following the proper steps. If you're going through, obviously, a service center, make sure, obviously, they're a reputable company, that they're a dealer for the brand that you work with, particularly on the warranty side. And other than that,
Smash that like button.
That's right, smash the like button. This is the kind of stuff that keeps you on the water fishing more often and less time broken down at the dock. And for those of you guys that don't like to read descriptions too much, website address is
preferredmarine.com.
preferredmarine.com.
One F, two R's.
And if you need to pick up the phone and phone a friend, the phone number is
954-527-9000. That's the office.
That's it.
You heard it.
Thanks for joining us for another Fish Blue Water video. Comment below and let us know what you want to see next.